What nobody tells you about empaths is that your deepest wounds aren't weaknesses. They're your hidden superpowers waiting to be unleashed. Here's the truth they don't want you to know. While everyone's out there trying to protect themselves from pain, you're about to discover why Carl Jung believed the wounded actually become the strongest warriors. You've been lied to about sensitivity being a curse. Most people get this wrong, but let me show you the right way to transform your emotional scars into unstoppable strength. If you've ever felt like your empathy was drowning you, like you absorb everyone's pain until you can't tell where they end, and you begin, stay with me. Because what I'm about to reveal isn't just another feel-good message about being special. This is about the ancient psychological truth that Carl Jung discovered, one that only a rare few ever truly understand. Jung believed that those who've been deeply wounded don't just heal, they become the healers. They don't just survive, they become warriors. Think about it. Have you ever wondered why you feel everything so deeply? Why a stranger's sadness can knock you off your feet? Why you can walk into a room and instantly know who's hurting, who's lying, who's barely holding it together? You're not broken. You're not too sensitive. You're experiencing what Jung called the wounded healer archetype. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how to activate this dormant warrior within you. Stay with me till the end, because the last truth is something even Jung himself said most people aren't ready to hear. We're going to journey through 12 powerful transformations that turn wounded empaths into unstoppable warriors. And trust me, number 7 is going to make you rethink everything you thought you knew about your sensitivity. The first transformation. Your wounds are your wisdom. Let me tell you something that might shock you. Jung discovered that every single effective healer, every powerful leader, every person who truly changes lives, they all share one thing in common. They've been wounded first. Not just a little hurt, but deeply, profoundly wounded in ways that would break most people. But here's where it gets interesting. Jung found that this wounding isn't random. It's actually an initiation. Think about the last time someone came to you with their problems. Did you notice how you instinctively knew what to say? How you could feel their pain in your bones? That's not coincidence. That's your wound speaking to theirs. It's like having a secret language that only those who've suffered can understand. You know that friend who always comes to you when their world is falling apart? They don't come because you have all the answers. They come because you've been in the darkness and found your way out. Jung said the doctor is only effective when he himself is affected. Only the wounded physician heals. This isn't poetry. It's psychology. When you've been broken, you develop something incredible. A map of the wound. You know every twist, every turn, every dead end in the labyrinth of pain. And that map? That's what makes you powerful. That's what transforms you from victim to victor. Have you ever noticed how the most compassionate people are often those who've suffered the most? That's not weakness. That's warrior training. The second transformation. The shadow becomes your ally. This one's going to blow your mind. You know that dark part of yourself you try to hide? The anger, the rage, the parts you think make you unlovable? Jung called this the shadow. And here's what nobody tells you. Warriors don't defeat their shadows. They befriend them. Picture this. You're at work, and that toxic coworker is doing their usual routine, spreading negativity like a virus. The old you would absorb it all, go home exhausted, maybe cry in your car. But the warrior empath, you've learned to use your shadow. That anger you feel, it's not bad. It's boundaries. Being born. That rage, it's your inner warrior saying enough is enough. I knew someone who spent years being the office doormat, always saying yes, always helping, always dying inside. Then one day she discovered what Jung meant about integrating the shadow. She didn't become mean. She became powerful. She learned that her anger was actually her self-respect fighting to survive. Now she runs her own company, and guess what? She's still an empath, but now she's an empath with teeth. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's your bodyguard that you've been keeping locked in the basement. When you finally let it out, when you integrate it like Jung taught, you don't become less empathetic. You become strategically empathetic. You learn when to open your heart and when to guard it like a fortress. Ask yourself right now, what part of your shadow have you been afraid to embrace? Because that might be exactly where your power is hiding. The third transformation, suffering becomes your superpower. Don't skip ahead yet. Number 8 is where things get really intense. But first, let me tell you about the most counterintuitive truth Jung discovered. Your suffering isn't punishment. It's not karma. It's not because you're weak. Your suffering is literally rewiring your brain to become superhuman in specific ways. Remember the last time you went through something that absolutely destroyed you? Maybe a betrayal, a loss, something that made you question everything. In that moment, you thought you were breaking, but Jung knew better. You were actually breaking through. Like a butterfly has to struggle out of its cocoon, or it never develops the strength to fly. Your struggles are building psychological muscles that comfortable people never develop. B. Here's what's wild. Neuroscience is now proving what Jung knew decades ago. When you experience deep emotional pain and consciously work through it, your brain literally creates new neural pathways. You develop what researchers call heightened emotional intelligence. You can read micro-expressions others miss. You can sense danger before it arrives. You can feel the emotional weather changing in a room like a human barometer. Think about Batman for a second. His parents' death didn't make him weak. It made him unstoppable. But here's the difference between you and fictional heroes. Your transformation is real. Every tear you've cried has been teaching your nervous system to recognize pain in others. Every heartbreak has been training your intuition to spot red flags from miles away. Every moment you thought you couldn't go on but did anyway, that was warrior training disguised as suffering. Jung believed that we don't just overcome suffering, we transform it into medicine for others. Your specific wounds create your specific gifts. Abandoned as a child? You develop a supernatural ability to make others feel included. Betrayed by someone you trusted? You become a human lie detector. Lost someone you loved? You develop the rare ability to sit with others in their grief without trying to fix it. Have you started to see the pattern in your own wounds yet? Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The fourth transformation. Vulnerability becomes your armor. This is where most people get it completely backwards. They think being a warrior means being tough, building walls, never showing weakness. But Jung discovered something that changes everything. True strength comes from conscious vulnerability. Not the weakness kind of vulnerability, but the warrior kind. Let me paint you a picture. You're in a group, and someone shares something deeply personal. Everyone else gets uncomfortable, changes the subject, makes a joke. But you lean in. You hold space. You share your own truth. And suddenly, the whole room shifts. That's not weakness, that's leadership. That's what Jung called the wounded healer in action. Here's the psychology behind it. When you've been wounded and healed, you lose the fear of being wounded again. It's like once you've survived drowning, water doesn't scare you the same way. You know you can survive it. This makes you dangerous in the best way possible. While everyone else is wearing masks, protecting their ego, playing it safe, you're out here being radically real. I once watched an empath friend completely transform a hostile business meeting. The room was full of sharks, everyone trying to dominate. Then she did something unexpected. She admitted she was nervous. She shared a personal story about failure. She showed her human side. And you know what happened? The sharks turned into humans. The meeting became collaborative instead of combative. She didn't win by fighting. She won by refusing to armor up. Jung taught that when we try to appear perfect, we're actually at our weakest. But when we consciously choose to show our wounds, we become untouchable. Because what can anyone do to you when you're not hiding anything? What power does judgment have when you've already faced your own darkness? The vulnerability of a warrior empath isn't naive openness. It's strategic authenticity. You choose when to open, how much to share, with whom to be vulnerable. It's vulnerability with boundaries, softness with strength, openness with wisdom. Are you still trying to hide your wounds, or are you ready to wear them like medals of honor? The fifth transformation. Isolation becomes sacred solitude. Number 7 is coming up, and trust me, it's the one that will change how you see yourself forever. But first, we need to talk about something every empath knows but rarely discusses: the loneliness of depth. Jung himself struggled with this. He wrote about how the journey inward, the path of individuation, often means walking alone. Not because you're antisocial, but because you're operating at a frequency most people can't access. It's like you're speaking a language that only a few understand. You crave deep connections while living in a world of surface-level interactions. Here's what's actually happening. As a wounded warrior empath, you've developed what Jung called differentiated consciousness. While others are still sleeping, you're awake. While they're watching shadows on the cave wall, you've seen the fire. This isn't arrogance, it's just reality. And it can be incredibly isolating. But here's the transformation. That isolation is an emptiness. It's sacred. Solitude. It's where your power regenerates. Think about every spiritual warrior in history. Buddha under the tree, Jesus in the desert, Jung in his tower. They all understood that solitude isn't punishment. It's where you plug directly into the source dose. When you're alone, really alone, something magical happens. All that energy you usually spend translating yourself for others, dimming your light so they're comfortable, managing their emotions. Suddenly it's all yours. You can feel your own frequency without interference. You can hear your inner voice without the static of other people's expectations. I know an empath who used to dread being alone, thought it meant something was wrong with her. Then she discovered what Jung meant about the necessity of solitude for individuation. Now she guards her alone time like treasure. She calls it her warrior training camp. In solitude, she's not lonely, she's loading. She's gathering power for when she returns to the world. The wounded warrior empath learns to see isolation not as rejection, but as selection. You're being selected for a different path, a deeper journey. Not everyone can handle the depths you swim in. Not everyone wants to face the truths you see. And that's okay. Your tribe is smaller but stronger. Quality over quantity becomes your battle cry. Do you still fear being alone? Or have you discovered the power plant that solitude really is? The sixth transformation. Boundaries become your sacred weapons. Here's something that's going to sound harsh but needs to be said. Your lack of boundaries isn't kindness. It's self-betrayal. And Jung knew this was the biggest trap for sensitive souls. You've been programmed to believe that saying no makes you selfish, that protecting your energy makes you mean. But the warrior empath knows better. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges with gates. And you get to decide who gets the key. Think about it like this. You wouldn't leave your front door open all night in a dangerous neighborhood, would you? So why do you leave your emotional doors wide open for energy vampires to walk through? Jung talked about something called psychological inflation. When you take on others' emotions and problems as your own, you lose yourself. You become inflated with stuff that isn't even yours. It's like trying to fight a battle while carrying everyone else's armor. No wonder you're exhausted. Here's a real-world example that might hit home. You know that friend who only calls when they need something. The one who dumps their problems on you for hours, but mysteriously disappears when you need support. The ode you would answer every call, give until you're empty. Then wonder why you feel resentful. The warrior empath You recognize this as emotional warfare, and you respond accordingly. Setting boundaries isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming strategic. You're not closing your heart, you're installing a security system. Jung understood that too. Truly help others, you must first secure your own oxygen mask. You can't pour from an empty cup, and more importantly, you shouldn't have to. The transformation happens when you realize boundaries are actually an act of love. Love for yourself, and love for others. When you're not depleted, you can show up fully. When you're not resentful, your help is genuine. When you protect your energy, you have more to give to the people and causes that truly matter. Which relationships in your life are draining your warrior energy right now? Because until you plug those leaks, you'll never reach your full power. The seventh transformation, your sensitivity becomes your radar system, okay? This is the one I warned you about. This is where everything clicks. Your sensitivity, that thing you've been told is your weakness, it's actually the most sophisticated radar system on the planet. Jung called this the transcendent function, where your conscious and unconscious work together to perceive reality at levels others can't even imagine. You know how you can walk into a room and immediately know who's about to break up, who's lying about being fine, who's genuinely happy. That's not weird. That's not being too sensitive. That's your wounded warrior radar picking up emotional frequencies like a military-grade detection system. While everyone else is operating with basic five senses, you're operating with what Jung would call a sixth sense, the ability to read the collective unconscious. Let me tell you about Sarah. She was a nurse who always thought something was wrong with her because she could feel her patient's pain, literally, in her own body. Doctors dismissed her, said she was being dramatic. Then one day, she felt a sharp pain in her chest while treating a patient who insisted he was fine. She pushed for tests. Turns out, he was having a silent heart attack. Her sensitivity literally saved his life. Now she's head of patient care, and the hospital calls her their secret weapon. This is what Jung meant when he said the wounded healer has access to knowledge that comes not from books, but from direct experience. Your sensitivity is downloading information from sources others can't access. It's like everyone else is using dial-up internet while you're on quantum fiber optics. But here's the key, and this is what most empaths miss. This radar system needs to be calibrated. Just like a soldier doesn't react to every blip on the radar, you need to learn what's a real threat and what's just noise. What's your emergency and what's someone else's drama? What needs your warrior response and what needs you to simply observe? The wounded warrior empath doesn't turn off the sensitivity. They turn it into intelligence. They use it like a supercomputer, processing emotional data at lightning speed, making decisions others would need hours to think through. You already know who to trust, who to avoid, what situations to engage with. You just need to start trusting your radar. Have you been trying to dull your sensitivity, or are you ready to weaponize it for good? The eighth transformation. Your empathy becomes strategic. This is insane, but it's 100% real. What if I told you that your empathy doesn't have to be an open channel that drains you? What if you could turn it into a precision tool that you control? Jung discovered that conscious empathy, what he called directed feeling, is completely different from unconscious emotional absorption. Picture a surgeon. They care deeply about their patient, but they don't absorb the patient's pain while operating. They use their caring to fuel precision, not to become overwhelmed. That's what strategic empathy looks like. You still feel deeply, but you choose when, how much, and with whom. Here's the game changer. Strategic empathy means you can turn it on and off like a switch. Not becoming unfeeling, but becoming intentional. It's the difference between being a sponge that absorbs everything and being a filter that chooses what to let through. Jung knew this was possible because he practiced it himself. He could enter deeply into a patient's psyche during therapy, then completely disconnect when the VOMS session ended. I watched this transformation in a social worker friend. She used to come home every night crying about her cases, unable to eat, unable to sleep. She was absorbing every client's trauma like it was her own. Then she learned about what Jung called conscious participation. Now, she's even more effective at her job, but she leaves work at work. She can be fully present with someone's pain from 9 to 5, then fully present with her own life after. She's not less caring, she's more powerful. The warrior empath learns to use empathy like a martial artist uses their strength, with precision, timing, and purpose. You don't waste it on energy vampires. You don't spend it on lost causes. You invest it where it can make a real difference. This isn't being cold or calculating. It's being wise with your superpower. Think about airlines telling you to put on your own oxygen mask first. That's not selfish. That's strategic. You're no good to anyone if you're passed out. Wounded warrior empath understands that selective empathy isn't less compassionate, it's more sustainable. And sustainability means you can keep fighting the good fight longer. Are you still letting your empathy run wild, or are you ready to train it like the powerful weapon it really is? The 9th transformation. Your trauma becomes your teaching. Don't skip to the end yet. The final transformation is going to shift everything. But first, understand this. Jung believed that our deepest wounds become our greatest teachings, not through avoiding them, but through conscious integration. Your trauma isn't just something that happened to you. It's curriculum you're meant to teach. Think about the most powerful teachers you've ever had. Not the ones with the most degrees, but the ones who really changed you. Chances are, they were teaching from experience, not theory. They had walked through the fire and came back to show you the path. That's what Jung called the archetypal teacher. Someone who teaches from their wounds. Here's what's wild about this transformation. The moment you start seeing your trauma as teaching material, it loses its power to victimize you. It becomes useful. It becomes purposeful. Suddenly, that horrible thing that happened isn't just pain. It's preparation. You're not a victim of your story. You're the author who gets to decide what it means. I know someone who was bullied mercilessly in school for being too sensitive. Years of therapy, years of trying to get over it. Then she discovered Jung's concept of the wounded healer, and everything shifted. She realized her experience wasn't something to overcome. It was something to offer. Now she runs anti-bullying programs in schools. She doesn't hide her story. She leads with it. And kids listen to her in a way they'd never listen to someone who hadn't been there. Jung wrote that we cannot change anything unless we accept it. But here's what he didn't explicitly say, but imply it. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation. It means transformation. When you accept your trauma as part of your journey, you can alchemize it into gold. Your mess becomes your message. Your test becomes your testimony. Your wound becomes your wisdom. The warrior empath doesn't just heal from trauma. They harvest it. They extract every lesson, every insight, every piece of wisdom, and they use it to light the way for others. This isn't spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. This is conscious transformation of pain into power. What trauma are you still trying to hide that could actually be your greatest teaching tool? The 10th transformation. Your darkness becomes your light source. Jung said something that most people aren't ready to hear. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is where the wounded warrior empath separates from everyone else. While others run from their darkness, you run toward it. Here's what nobody understands about darkness. It's not the absence of light. It's light so condensed, so concentrated, that it appears dark. Like a black hole is an empty space. It's matter so dense that even light can't escape. Your darkness, your shadow, your wounds, they're not empty spaces. They're power so concentrated that most people can't even look at them directly. Think about coal and diamonds. Same element, different pressure. Your darkness is just your light under pressure. And when you finally stop running from it, when you turn around and face it like Jung did in his Red Book experiences, something incredible happens. The darkness doesn't swallow you. It transforms you. It's like discovering you've been sitting on a gold mine while begging for pennies. Let me tell you about Marcus. Addiction nearly killed him. Years of shame, hiding, pretending to be okay. Then he encountered Jung's idea about integrating the shadow. He stopped trying to kill his addictive part and started trying to understand it. What was it seeking? What was it trying to heal? He discovered his addiction was actually a misdirected spiritual seeking. Now he's been sober for 10 years and helps others understand that addiction isn't moral failure, it's spiritual emergency. His darkness became his lighthouse. The wounded warrior empath realizes that the parts of themselves they're most ashamed of are often their greatest strengths in disguise. Your anxiety, that's your intuition on overdrive. Your depression, that's your soul refusing to participate in meaningless activities. Your anger, that's your boundaries trying to be born. Your darkness isn't your enemy, it's your teacher in disguise. Jung knew that individuation, becoming whole, requires embracing both light and dark, not choosing one over the other, but integrating both. The warrior empath doesn't become enlightened by avoiding darkness. They become enlightened by digesting it, metabolizing it, transforming it into fuel for their fire. What darkness in you are you still trying to exile instead of integrate? The 11th transformation. Your healing becomes mutual. Here's something that will blow your mind about Jung's wounded healer concept. Healing is never one-directional. When you heal others, you heal yourself. When you help someone else integrate their shadow, your own shadow gets lighter. This isn't just feel-good philosophy, it's psychological law. Jung discovered this in his own practice. He noticed that the patients who transformed him the most were the ones he also helped transform. It's like a quantum entanglement of souls. When one heals, both heal. This is why wounded warrior empaths often find their calling in healing professions, not because they're martyrs, but because they intuitively understand this mutual transformation. Think about the last time you really helped someone through something heavy. Remember how afterward you didn't feel drained, but somehow lighter? Like something in you had also shifted. That's not imagination. That's what Jung called the dialectical process, where both parties are changed through authentic encounter. Here's a practical example that might resonate. Ever notice how, when you're giving advice to a friend about something you're also struggling with, you suddenly hear yourself saying exactly what you needed to hear? That's not coincidence. That's the universe using you as a channel to heal both of you. Simultaneously, the advice flows through you, not from you. The wounded warrior empath stops seeing healing as sacrifice and starts seeing it as exchange. You're not giving away your energy. You're participating in an energy exchange that upgrades both parties. It's like two phones sharing battery power. Both end up more charged than if they stayed separate. Jung believed that every genuine therapeutic encounter changes both people. The therapist isn't some untouchable guru dispensing wisdom from above. They're a fellow traveler, a wounded healer who's just a few steps ahead on the same path. This makes the healing more real, more grounded, more achievable. Have you noticed how your own wounds seem to attract people with similar wounds? That's not burden, that's purpose. The 12th transformation. You become the alchemist. This is it. The final transformation. The one Jung said most people aren't ready for because it requires taking ultimate responsibility for your own psychological and spiritual evolution. The wounded warrior empath doesn't just heal. They become an alchemist, transforming not just their own lead into gold, but helping others do the same. Jung spent years studying alchemy, not because he believed in literally turning metal into gold, but because he saw it as the perfect metaphor for psychological transformation. The alchemist takes base materials, trauma, pain, shadow, wounds, and through conscious work, transforms them into gold, wisdom, strength, compassion, purpose. But here's what Jung knew that changes everything. The alchemist isn't working on external materials. The alchemist is the material. You are both the experiment and the experimenter, the wound and the healer, the problem and the solution. This is what individuation really means. Becoming whole by integrating all parts of yourself. The wounded warrior empath who reaches this level doesn't just have healing abilities. They become healing itself. They don't just know about transformation. They embody it. When people are around them, change happens automatically, not because they're trying to change anyone, but because their very presence activates others' healing potential. Think about water. It doesn't try to clean things. It just flows, and in its flowing, things get clean. The alchemist empath is like that. They don't try to heal people. They just be themselves fully, integrated, authentic, whole, and healing happens around them. Jung called this the self, with a capital S. Not the ego self, but the totalized self that includes conscious, unconscious, shadow, and light. This is why Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you think you should be, not who others want you to be, but who you truly are, wounds and all. Because your wounds aren't mistakes. They're not punishments. They're not random. They're the exact experiences you needed to become the specific kind of healer the world needs. The wounded warrior empath alchemist understands the ultimate truth. You didn't come here to be normal. You came here to be yourself. And yourself includes all of it. The wounds, the sensitivity, the depth, the intensity. These aren't bugs in your system. They're features. They're what make you not just a healer, but an alchemist capable of transformation that seems like magic to those who don't understand the process. If these signs felt familiar, you don't just think differently. You are different. Jung believed minds like yours are meant to lead, not follow. You're not meant to fit in. You're meant to stand out. You're not meant to be understood by everyone. You're meant to understand everyone. You're not meant to have a normal life. You're meant to have a meaningful life. So here's my question for you, warrior. Are you ready to stop apologizing for your sensitivity? Are you ready to stop hiding your wounds? Are you ready to stop dimming your light so others feel comfortable in their darkness? Because the world doesn't need another person pretending to be okay. The world needs wounded warriors who've transformed their pain into power, their sensitivity into strength, their empathy into strategic compassion. Tell me in the comments, which transformation spoke to you most? Which one made you realize you're not crazy? You're not too much. You're not broken. You're becoming. Because I want you to know something. Your journey from wounded to warrior isn't just personal. It's archetypal. It's mythological. It's necessary. Every time a wounded empath becomes a warrior, the collective consciousness of humanity levels up. Every time someone transforms their trauma into teaching, the whole world gets a little lighter. Every time you choose to see your sensitivity as strength, you give permission for others to do the same. If you want more deep insights like this, hit subscribe, because your journey of self-discovery has just begun. And remember, Jung said the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But on the other side of that terror, that's where your warrior lives. That's where your power waits. That's where your true self has been all along, waiting for you to be brave enough to claim it. The journey from wounded to warrior isn't easy. It's not supposed to be. Easy doesn't transform you. Easy doesn't forge warriors. Easy doesn't create alchemists. But you weren't born for easy. You were born for meaningful. You were born for deep. You were born for transformation. So, take your wounds seriously, but don't let them define you. Let them refine you. Let them teach you. Let them transform you. Because the world needs wounded warriors now more than ever. The World needs empaths who've learned to protect their energy while still keeping their hearts open. The world needs sensitive souls who've learned to be strong without becoming hard. Your sensitivity isn't your weakness. It's your superpower waiting to be activated. Your wounds aren't your shame. They're your wisdom waiting to be shared. Your empathy isn't your burden. It's your gift waiting to be refined. The shadow you've been running from? It's trying to give you something. The darkness you've been avoiding? It's where your light is hiding. The wounds you've been trying to heal. They're trying to make you a healer. Jung knew this. Now you know it too. The question isn't whether you're a wounded healer. You are. The question is, what are you going to do with that power? The journey from wounded to warrior isn't a destination. It's an ongoing process of becoming. Every day you get to choose. Victim or victor, wounded or warrior, broken or breaking through. And now that you know the truth, that your wounds are your wisdom, your sensitivity is your strength, your empathy is your superpower, you can never go back to playing small. Welcome to the path of the wounded warrior. Welcome to your becoming. Welcome home.